Hi golfers, Nick here from Nick Taylor Golf. It's Friday, so welcome to another lesson on golf tips. This week on golf tips, we're going to take a look at the short game. I haven't covered the short game much in these series of lessons. I do get asked quite a lot about the short game and my sort of theories on it. So we're going to talk a little bit about technique and some of the big issues that I see with golfers that struggle with their short game. So the first problem I see is the use of the bounce. And a lot of golfers, when they're chipping, they'll push the handle forward, and what that does, it takes away all the bounce at the bottom, which is there to sort of help the club as it glides through the grass. So if you look at the wedge here, you can see an angle from the leading edge to the back of the club, and that's the bounce angle. And as the club goes through, you kind of want some sort of interaction with the bounce, because if you lean the club too far forward, that bounce angle is now gone. And what will tend to happen is, as soon as that club comes into contact with the ground, it will tend to sort of dig into the surface, and you'll tend to hit the ball a little bit fat. So a lot of golfers that do hit the ball fat, they end up thinning the golf ball because they try not to hit the ground as they go through. But it is important when you're playing all these shots around the green that the club does have some interaction with the ground as it goes through. So using the bounce is so important. So one of the biggest issues I see at setup is golfers that have the handle too far forward, and like I said to you, that takes away all that bounce, and then what they end up doing is move the ball further and further back to sort of compensate for the strike, and they end up hitting low shots, thin shots and fat shots from that position. So what I like to see is a more neutral setup, so having the ball more in the middle of your body and the shaft lean very minimal. So you can see here, as I set up, that shaft lean just leaning slightly towards the target, just to help me use a bit more of that bounce as it comes through, as opposed to leaning too much and taking away all the bounce angle. I see various ball positions as well for sort of shots around the green, and we're just going to look at sort of a basic technique here. There is a time and a place to play the ball back in the stance and with the handle forward, which we'll go into in a little bit of detail, but really I just want to try and cover the basics for a basic sort of shot around the green. So setup wise, feet pretty close together, ball position in the middle. My stance is square. You do get some golfers that tend to sort of open the stance, but my stance is pretty square to the target. Ball's in the middle, lower body weight slightly favouring the left, but minimal shaft lean. So you can see here, just leaning slightly forward. I'm not leaning it too far forward. So the importance here is I'm trying to return the club back to the same sort of angle it was at address. So with that shaft lean there, I'm trying to return it back to that same position. And one of the biggest faults I see with shots around the green is golfers that have sort of a very sort of wide, almost trying to hit like a shallow shot, and they sort of go really wide and they end up sort of fatting the ball, hitting the ground too far back. So if you look at some of the best chippers in the world, if you look at how the distance that the handle moves, it's sort of very, very minimal. A lot of golfers I see, their handle moves along too wide back and too wide through. So the idea is we want to try and feel like that handle is sort of almost sort of pivoting on that point. So it does appear that it's a little bit wristy, and I know a lot of theories in the short game is to try and take out the wrist, but actually you can take them out too much. And like I said to you before, if you take out the wrist too much, you're probably not going to use the bounce. You're probably going to have too much shaft lean coming through. So minimal shaft lean, I'm just trying to sort of return that club back to the same angle it was at address with minimal shaft lean. So for me, or for you to try and get the feeling, if you're one of those golfers that has quite a wide sort of arc of their pitching technique, then you probably want to feel like the handle here doesn't really move too much, sort of just pivoting around that point. So I'm going to hit a few shots here. We're going to look at some different angles, look at sort of the contact as it goes through. So I'll just sort of play a basic shot. So ball in the middle, minimal shaft lean. Just feel like a little bit wristy, but just trying to return that club back to the same angle it was at address with a little bit of contact on the ground. So a little bit like that. So you saw there as the club come through, just sort of brushed the ground as it went through. If I'd had the handle too far forward, very easy to sort of stab it, and you see the ball goes off quite low. So I did mention earlier, there is a time and place to have the ball back and the hands forward, and that's if you want to try and play a low shot. So around the green, I'll play my standard shot, which was I just showed you, But if I wanted to play like a lower shot, instead of grabbing a different iron and playing it the same way, I'll actually change my setup a little bit. So what I'm going to do now is move the ball back in my stance, so now it's pretty much off my back toe, and I'm going to have the hands forward. And for this shot, to play it low, I'm actually going to do what I said not to do earlier, and that is to have sort of a wider sort of arc. So you can see the butt of the club here is quite wide from my body, completely the opposite to the way I explained the shot a second ago. So 2 shots around the green, one standard shot and one low shot. So I'm putting the ball on my back foot, hands forward. I'm actually putting the handle a little bit higher for this shot as well. So I'm going to have sort of no wrist hinge here and try and have like the widest arc in my stroke. Okay, so hopefully you saw that there. So that ball went off a lot lower. The first one went off a lot higher. So the first shot is a shot I'll tend to play the majority of the time, because I feel I have more control over that shot, and I know I'm going to pop it up into the air and use a little bit of the club face, try and get a bit of spin on the ball, try and get some sort of control. I know playing the ball back, its ball's going to sort of run away from me. Even though I'm using a 54-degree wedge here, the ball still goes quite low when you have it back. So if you're struggling to get the ball up into the air, even with a high lofted club, check your ball position. If it's too far back, the hands are too far forward, the likelihood is it's going to go a lot lower than you would like. So just to recap, there's 2 different sort of setup positions, 2 different techniques that I've explained to play these shots around the green. I like to try and use the same wedge if I can. So I'll play these shots with the same wedge rather than changing my clubs to play a chip and run. I'll use the same one, just adapt my technique a little bit. So I'm just going to play that standard shot again. So ball position in the middle, minimal shaft lean, weight on the left, and I'm going to just feel that the butt of the club here isn't travelling too far, and I'm going to try and return the shaft back to the same angle it was at setup. Okay, nipped that quite nicely. So golfers, I hope that helps. If you've got any questions on that, post them in the box below. If you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel. It's absolutely free, plenty of content to come, and you can follow me on my other social media platforms such as Facebook, Instagram and Twitter.
Cry for the hours of sand that I took you to my place.